let's talk about one of your favourite teams. Atletico Madrid.
Oh, great.
The reason we're doing that...
His favourite manager too.
Absolutely. And the best part about that is here he is, Diego Simeone, in an exclusive interview with our colleagues at ESPN Argentina.
La realidad nuestra es estar en Champions. Año tras año creo que el objetivo que traza el club todas las temporadas para seguir creciendo como club, como viene creciendo hace 12 años, es entrar en Champions. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Antes era entre los 3 primeros, hoy es entre los 4 primeros y ese es el objetivo primordial.
El anterior mercado llega de Paul aquí, cuando él no está en la selección se siente. ¿Qué hay que hacer con él?
Él es un chico extraordinario, la verdad que es un placer poder hablar con él porque tiene la esencia nuestra de Argentina, más allá de lo que genera, y te hace sentir bien la charla con él. No es solamente de fútbol, es de la vida, de un montón de situaciones, de cosas, y que yo les cuento que en realidad desde que llegó al Atlético de Madrid no nos ha podido dar lo mismo que ha dado en la selección argentina. Sí, ha tenido partidos importantes, momentos importantes, pero esa estabilidad que le ha permitido ser lo que es en la selección argentina, hoy todavía acá no lo ha podido fortalecer.
And nice stuff there from our interviewer, Gustavo Lopez from ESPN Argentina. We're now joined by our Madrid correspondent, Alex Kirkland, also La Liga's lead commentator here at ESPN, Mr. Ian Darg. But let me start with you, Craig.
Did he ask him in that interview, because I missed a little bit of it because it was obviously subtitled. Did he ask him why he was so negative in his tactics? I don't think he did he? You know, he asked him about Julian Alvarez and blah, 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 but why continue the negative tactics that we're seeing? And he talked there at Simeone about Julian Alvarez playing around the big target man. Well, he brought Sorloth in, and he either doesn't play him or he takes him off. So they've not been able to really have a chance to ferment a partnership. So it's a bit... That interview from Simeone was a bit, look at me, I'm kind of still doing great, you know, and I'm getting you in the top 4, and that's my job, and maybe you shouldn't really expect anything else from me. I kind of got a little bit of that from him.
He's only on 20 million a year.
And the other
what do you expect for 20 million a year?
Probably more than
the
that.
other side of it is, and I get what he's saying about Real Madrid and Barcelona. And Real Madrid were La Liga champions last year, and they did win the Champions League. However, a lot of that was down to the manager. They had a really, really bad season with injury in key positions, but somehow coped. Barcelona have had that this year, thus far are coping. Barcelona had a bad season last year. So it's not as if these two have been like on a trajectory of been continuing to be juggernauts and playing great. They've both been at various times, they've both been gettable. But yet he's not manoeuvred this side recently into a position where he's ready to challenge if one of them falters. I mean, when Barcelona were having this terrible time last year, losing all these goals, and Xavi was basically chucking it in, Atleti were nowhere to be seen. So I kind of think that was a feel sorry for me interview.
Because, Alex, we're looking here at the spending between Atleti and Barcelona. In recent years, it's a lot more of an even playing field when you look at what's been there. To Craig's point as well, Barcelona have not been at their best in recent years, and much of it due to their financial strengths. So why is it so hard for Atleti to be competing with Real Madrid and Barcelona?
Well, look, I do have a bit more sympathy with Simeone's argument, I think. I think that we've gotten so used over the last decade to Atletico either winning the odd title or finishing second or third or always finishing top 4. Of course, they've never failed to make the Champions League under Simeone. And in that sense, I think Simeone has been a little bit the victim of his own success because he has sort of set this standard. He's made this normality for Atletico Madrid. But if you look historically, that hasn't always been the case. Yes, they're a big club. Yes, they've won things in the past, but they've also, 25 years ago, they were relegated. Simeone's brought them a degree of stability they've never previously had. Now, have they been a little bit disappointing in the last year or so? Yes, I would agree. So far this season, have they not been convincing? Yes, I would agree with that. In terms of the finances, yes, they've spent some big money in the transfer market this summer and in previous years. But if you look at some other numbers, look, for example, at the La Liga spending limits, which give you an idea of what a club spends overall on their first team squad. Atletico's is still half what Real Madrid's is. Compared to Barca, even with all of Barcelona's financial struggles, Barca's squad spending limit is still a third more than Atleti's is for this season. So yes, they've spent some significant money in the transfer market, no question. But in terms of the finances overall, in terms of what the club can do overall, they're still a long way behind those two. And the fact that they can compete as often as they do, which isn't every season, of course it's not. They have sort of good years and bad years within that consistency. But the fact they can compete, I think, as often as they do, I think is still hugely impressive. And I think it's easy to forget that.
Yeah, what do you think there, Stevie? Because this is their financial strengths, Atleti's, they go back decades. And so that's why it's so important every year for them to be making the Champions League, for them to be having a deep run, to make sure that they get good prices for players as well. Where do you stand on it with what Alex is saying there, being a little bit more sympathetic to the cause?
I don't understand Alex's depiction of impressive. I don't get that whatsoever, impressive. There's nothing been impressive about this team in recent years. But yet they spend money. And probably the problem I think Simeone has is he spends money, but he's spending money on similar types of player all the time. People like Conor Gallagher, who are not going to open up defences. People that will challenge and run. He said it in the interview. An Atletico Madrid player, and he named 4 things. They've got desire, they've got work rate. That's what he goes to first. And right at the very end of it, he threw in ability. That's half the problem. You can go and spend money, but if you don't go and spend money on players that are going to play a different way, then you're not going to play a different way.
Could you not argue that they did that with João Felix and it didn't work?
Well, they did it once, so that means because at one certain player it doesn't work with him, you throw it away, and you just go and buy. Like De Paul. You're talking about De Paul. Listen, De Paul for Argentina. Does he do well? Yes, he does well. But guess what he does well at? He harries, chases, gets the ball for Messi or somebody else. So if you're going to spend money, which they are, and they can't argue they haven't spent money, we showed the graphic. But if you're going to chuck up the type of football that they do, then I guess we shouldn't be surprised, because if that's the type of players that you sign generally, then that's what you're going to get. And actually, Simeone's team has ever played what you call the modern game of football. Because what he does is what went on when I was playing 40 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't remember an Atletico Madrid team ever playing any sort of decent attacking football.
What's your response to this, Ian?
Well, I think you've got to see the big picture with Atletico Madrid. Essentially, he's a pragmatic manager who's ground out results. And as Alex was saying, he's been very successful in terms of trophies. He's gotten to 2 Champions League final, couple of titles, couple of Europa Leagues, often or nearly always in the top 3, except last season when they were 4th, even behind Girona. Has the football been good to watch? No, not particularly. But really, if they want to become a flair team, I think they're going to have to change the coach, because Simeone, this is what he does. And he is a victim, I think, of his own success with all those trophies as well. And they have spent, you just saw it on the caption, over 200 million euros on players. And this season, I think they've drawn 5 of their games, including the last couple as well. Got hammered 4-0 by Benfica in the Champions League. So it isn't going well this season, but they probably will finish 3rd again. But Stevie's got a good point.
He's able to miss out on Champions League football. And in fact, in the past, there have even been clauses in his contract, that really highly paid contract the guys were referring to there, that specify if you don't make it into the Champions League, there will be financial consequences as well. So, yeah, if he didn't do that, then his position would be under threat. But he does it every year. And that's the minimum, I guess, requirement. Anything above that is a bonus. I just say be careful what you wish for, because I don't have any doubt at all that the day that he eventually leaves, whenever that is, and when someone else comes in, I don't think they'll be anything like as successful as he has been. Yes, they might be more fun to watch, might be more entertaining, but I think they'd also be more up and down and more inconsistent. So yeah, I think Atleti fans, at least the vast majority that you speak to here, we want him to stick around for as long as possible, because like I say, a lot of these fans have seen really poor Atletico Madrid teams, and in the last decade, have they always been a thrill? No, often they haven't at all. But they've had seen some brilliant players, from Antoine Griezmann to whoever else, and they've won trophies. And like I say, that's not something that they've always done, even in the relatively recent past.
Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think the way football has changed, the game has changed. There's no doubt about it. In the last 10 years, in particular, last 15 years, maybe even the last 5, even more so. And I think the way fans consume the game has changed as well, you know, in terms of how global it is. But the paying fan that goes to a game, I think years ago it was all about results, and maybe for Atleti fans and some, it is just about results. But I think now it's more about entertainment and results. The cost of a ticket price is much higher. The cost to take your family is much higher. It's an entertainment business. And most clubs, elite level clubs around Europe, are all looking for the managers to play in a different way. And I think the sort of draconian way, if I want to call it that some of the managers coach, and it's not that it's dead and buried, but it's usually when a team are trying to avoid relegation, they get in somebody who can organise and play defensive. But the sort of Mourinho, Simeone, Max Allegri, I mentioned that the other day, there are many others. I think there's an appetite for change.
Even with the trophies that he's delivered in the last decade?
Well, how many has there been?
Well, there's been even
when it dries up, when it starts.
A Copa del Rey 11 years ago. Then obviously the 2 Champions League finals.
Well, again, but this is not the History Channel.
But it's still silverware in that last decade, right?
Yeah.
Is that enough to say?
Well, Eric Ten Hag's won 2 trophies at Man United recently, and they've been absolutely pants.
But they're not finishing in the top 4, are they?
But my point is, the way, in my opinion, a football fan now turns up, whether it's Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, Real Madrid, Barca, Juventus, they wanted to change the style at Juve. They wanted Thiago Motta. People want more, I think now, than just turning up and saying 10 men behind the ball. Because it gets old, and the game has changed. The game is way more expansive than when him and I played. It's the field is so stretched. The type of football some of these teams are playing is amazing. But there are coaches out there, and he's one of them, that's old school. And that's not to say that can't work. But the majority, I think, of the football supporter, both watching at home and paying their money at a game, wants more. And when the trophies that you mentioned start drying up, it gets old. It gets old, this getting in the top 4. Yeah, the board might like it because the finances are there. But I believe, and I've believed it for a while, that the public that follows this sport, they have changed the way that they watch and what they want to watch. And I think this stuff is getting... The Mourinho stuff got very old very quickly. When the trophies dried up, it became problematic, and he was one of the best. So I'm using a guy who was the top of the top. When the trophies dried up and the football was dire, it got extremely old, and then we saw all the problems start. Now he's managing in Turkey. It gets old quickly, and I think that's where it'll get eventually with Simeone. I don't know how long it'll take, but I think it'll get there.
Do you think the trophies will dry up? They have been sporadically placed throughout that last decade.
When was the last trophy they won?
21, La Liga.
3 years ago. And so for the last 3 years, they've not been close to it. You know, maybe they've been sitting in second for a period of time, but they've never been close to winning it. So, again, if you're the highest paid manager in the planet, or one of the highest, really, you just go and stick people behind the ball, because generally that's what they do, particularly in big games. They spent over 100 million on one player. Are you telling me the team that can go and spend over 100 million on one player should be happy just to get in the top 4? I don't think so.